Hi guys, as predicted, Brexiteers are having a meltdown over comments Keir Starmer made earlier this week about alignment with EU standards. GB News and some of its commentators are losing their minds at the moment, but what is coming out, ironically, is the idea that what Starmer wants is a problem, but not for the reason Brexiteers normally have. Here, former head of broadcasting at Labour, Matthew Laza, tried to explain to Nigel Farage that this isn't about rejoining the European Union. Have a listen.
It's almost as if Keir Starmer is saying everything that comes from Europe is wonderful. We're not capable of making environmental law ourselves. This really was Remain a talk, or even almost rejoin a talk.
Well, I think there's no question of rejoining. However much in his heart Keir may want to, his head will certainly rule that out. And absolutely clear that the manifesto would commit to not rejoining because it would be political suicide otherwise. This is exactly the political divide that we were just talking about over the environment. It's exactly the same political divide. There's huge pressure, of course, within the party as well, where, 90% plus of members voted to remain. In fact, probably higher than that now. The sort of left levers have left alongside Corbyn. So there's huge political pressure. He's trying to walk a tightrope. I think he needs to be very careful on his language because the Tories are going to weaponise. These are the two things they want to weaponise most in the Red Wall. They're going to want to weaponise the environment and the Green Pledges, and they want to weaponise Europe. So there is no rejoining. If they want to have a closer relationship, they need to find a form of words that sort of outlines it, which is not. Well, I don't think they want to go that far at all. I don't think they want to be talking about membership as a word in any sense.
If you stay aligned, it's still Brino, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it is.
Yeah, name only.
Yeah, I mean, effectively, what they need to do is be clear what they want and be clear if there are benefits from having a closer trade relationship. But at the moment, the language, I think, is difficult because, I mean, you will remember this. Tony Blair used to give lots of lovely speeches saying how pro-European he was, but he never gave them in Britain. He always used to go abroad. And I think the optics, as somebody who used to organise that conference, and I know that backdrop well, I probably wouldn't have been talking about it amidst in Montreal, amidst with Justin Trudeau and that sort of forum. He should be in Darlington if he's going to be talking about this, saying it's because of jobs in electric vehicles that I want to do this, X, Y, and Z.
Okay, first of all, my God, this guy speaks fast. Anyway, and he's correct. The optics were not very good. He should have been delivering those comments, that speech in Darlington or wherever the battery factories are. And he should be saying, this is why we need to invest in this technology. This is why we should be pushing net zero. This is why we should be aligning with EU standards. Now, the thing I want to focus on here, of course, is the weaponization of Brexit once again by the right wing and the Tories in particular. When I said at the beginning, this is ironic, what I mean by this is that and we're already starting to hear this rhetoric since Starmer delivered this speech, that he wants to align with EU standards. He wants Britain to be a rule taker, not a rule maker. Now, of course, they don't go any step further and say, well, what does rule maker mean? Well, of course, being a rule maker when it comes to EU standards is being a member of the European Union. So the Brexiteers and the far right, they don't want Britain to rejoin, of course. But they will say that, well, under Starmer's plan, we would be a rule taker, not a rule maker. But I have to break this to Nigel Farage, who already knows this, but is pretending not to, and Brexiteers, who don't know, Britain is already a rule taker. So when businesses are trying to export, they have to follow EU standards if they want to avoid most of the paperwork. If they want to sell into the single market, they have to follow EU standards. If they don't, they won't be able to export. This is being a rule taker. Now you can talk about, well, we can sell to Southeast Asia, we have this CPTPP or whatever, but this isn't where most of the trade goes. Most of the trade goes into Europe. And businesses have to adapt. That adaptation can be moving to the European Union. It can be investing in the resources necessary to follow EU standards. There's no point talking about we need to diverge. That's Brexiteer rhetoric. It's easy for people like Nigel Farage, Boris Johnson, Jacob Rees-Mogg and others to say we need to diverge because they're not the ones who are actually having to fill out the paperwork. They're not the ones bearing the cost. And ironically, Brexiteers and the Tories are going to try and weaponize this by saying Starmer wants to be a rule taker, not a rule maker. Because if the UK says, well, we're going to have our own standards, we're going to have our own regulations and rules or whatever, that will work, but it'll be extremely limited. And the further the UK diverges from EU standards, the more difficult it will be for British businesses. They'll either up sticks and move, they'll remove their investments, or they'll just focus on the UK market, which is of course difficult to expand out of. So I think what Starmer did here is he's been honest. We have to align closer with EU standards if we want to help businesses. But he's not talking about rejoining the European Union, and it won't be part of the manifesto, because it will be practically impossible for the UK to rejoin the European Union in the first Parliament, in the next Parliament. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.